Two things before we start this video, guys. One is that my friend and colleague Zaynah, who is in the same year as me here at Warwick, has just taken the plunge and started a YouTube channel. I'd be really grateful if you went over, give her channel a subscribe, go and watch her content. I'm sure it's going to be much more interesting than the stuff I produce. Go listen to a very fresh face talking about her medical school experiences, which will be very different to mine. She's really nice, a really good friend of mine, and I'd really appreciate it if you went and helped her out, so please do that. Then secondly, there's still another week left on my stethoscope giveaway. I'll leave a link to that video in the description, but you can win a brand new Littmann 3 stethoscope, which is perfect for anyone not just at medical school or thinking about going to medical school, but anyone who is going to work in a healthcare discipline at some point in the future. Go and bag yourself a stethoscope. But let's jump into the video. Hi everyone, hope everyone's happy, kind of keeping safe. Oh, that's reflecting quite a lot of light, isn't it? Glasses have to go off. This is just a very quick update to let you know kind of what's been going on with me, what I've been up to amidst the whole coronavirus lockdown. So just very quickly, our placements have been off. Normally in phase 2 and phase 3 of the course at Warwick, you're on clinical placement pretty much all the time. Obviously at the moment there aren't enough doctors to teach us and services are massively disrupted, so our education has kind of been put on hold a little bit. In the interim, a lot of us are working as band 3s. We're working essentially as what are healthcare assistants within the NHS, providing support on the wards and in departments where it's busy, like ITU. So I thought I'd very quickly just update you on where I've been working, the kinds of things that I've been doing. It's actually been a really good experience, just not necessarily in the ways that I thought it was going to be. So at the beginning of all this, we were told that we could go and work as healthcare assistants in the trusts, be essentially fast-tracked through the training, because we already thought as experienced medical students to have the basic skills we needed. They just needed to give us the extra skills that we needed to become competent healthcare assistants. Now, in my instance, I feel like we maybe didn't receive as complete and as thorough training as I maybe would have liked had I been going into this role another time, but thankfully everyone has been super nice on the wards. But I mean this in the context of something as simple as making a bed in a way that is suitable and kind of up to hospital standards, or helping wash and toilet patients in a way that is safe for those patients in the context of a hospital. I say they're all really simple things, but there are quite specific protocols. So you do kind of need someone to take you through all of these things the first time you do them, because obviously you instinctively think you know, but then when it comes to it, you want to behave in a way that is professional and acceptable. Thankfully all that was fine. So at the beginning I was working on a cardiology ward, which had quite a lot of patients, and there was a lot of that hands-on care to do, so a lot of feeding patients, toileting, helping them wash, things like that, which is where patients with more serious heart conditions go. They need a lot of monitoring, there's fewer patients, but they receive more intensive care, as it were. They're watched much more closely, there are more staff available for if things acutely go wrong. We're given these spiffy uniforms to wear, which can be washed at high enough temperatures to get rid of any coronavirus. But something that I just want to get logged, which I think is really important just for posterity when I'm reflecting on this myself in the future, it felt very much to me like those wards were very overstaffed, because there's been a problem nationally where you kind of expect a certain number of patients to present with strokes, with heart attacks, with appendicitis. All of these people who you can kind of depend on coming in and filling up hospital wards, but we were actually seeing very few patients coming in, and this was true across basically the entire region. The hospital was very quiet, apart from ITU and ED, which were obviously pretty full because they're normally pretty full, but our medical wards, very quiet. So this meant you could have 6 staff looking after 6 to 8 patients. There was definitely very little purpose in my being there as a medical student. I'm sure the nurses who we worked with, because we're dictated to by the nurses in this role, not by the doctors, really lovely to us. I'm sure they appreciated us being there just for when things got busy. but by and large, I kind of felt a bit in the way. Like there wasn't much utility in my actually being there, because the healthcare assistants that they have, very, very competent, very experienced, but they're now having to take time out of their job to kind of babysit me. That felt a bit uncomfortable, because with the staff they had, they were absolutely more than capable of dealing with the number of patients they had, and it actually in some cases took work away from them and made their shift more dull than it otherwise would have been. But that was fine. You know, I was grateful for the opportunity to go and contribute. I was getting paid. This time we're getting paid $10.28 an hour to do, honestly, in that role I was doing very little work, but whatever. Then what's kind of happened is, because there were a group of us medical students assigned to the cardiology department as a whole, we each kind of got split up and moved into slightly different roles where we'd be more stable. So a lot of the time before then, I'd been flitting around between the cardiology ward and coronary care. But then a few weeks ago, I was moved to a permanent position on the cardiac assessment unit. And this isn't a ward, it's a unit. So what it is if someone has acute coronary syndrome, something that sounds like angina or a heart attack, they will come to the cardiac assessment unit to be dealt with instead of going to the emergency department because of COVID. Cardiac assessment unit is COVID clean. It does not accept anyone who there's a chance they might have COVID. Whereas on the other wards, I have interacted with patients who are either query COVID or COVID positive, obviously with full PPE provided. And that was slightly different because on this assessment unit, we don't have inpatients. We don't have patients who stay on the ward for extended periods of time. If someone is admitted to the hospital, they need to go onto an actual ward once they've been assessed on the assessment unit and the doctors and the nurses have decided what's wrong with them. So they come in, they get seen by usually a nurse practitioner. So that's been another really good learning opportunity. I'm working with cardiac nurse practitioners who are able to independently diagnose, prescribe, do most of the management of these patients before a doctor becomes involved at all. So that's slightly different to the environments I'd normally work in. So they come in, they get seen, they decide that, you know, patient might have a STEMI or angina or another cause entirely, something like pancreatitis or gastroesophageal reflux, some other cause for their chest pain. And if they need admitting, they'll be sent to the appropriate ward on their bed. If they can go home, they go home. But that leaves me in an unusual position because I'm employed technically as a healthcare assistant, and kind of there's no utility for a healthcare assistant who aids patients with personal tasks on an assessment unit. So what I'm actually covering is more equivalent to a nurse, but I should say here that obviously I'm unqualified in general to be a healthcare assistant. I'm definitely unqualified to cover a nurse. So I think it's just more having an extra set of hands on deck for when things get really hectic, because they can if a lot of patients come in unexpectedly or at once. But the other thing that has meant is that it's actually been a really good learning opportunity, because the jobs in that instance that are useful for me to do are things like clerking, taking histories from patients or learning as much as I can about them when they come in, doing sets of bloods, doing ECGs, sending bloods to the lab and interacting with the lab or the on-call registrars and consultants trying to get things done. And there's actually been a lot of scope to do things that I wouldn't normally get to do. So there's been chances to practice breaking both good and bad news, explaining to patients a bit more about the conditions that they have, or maybe about the drugs that they need to take and how they'll do that. Obviously, this is all done under direct supervision, either from the doctors or the nurses, but they've been really good about seeing the opportunity for my learning, because again, the nurses are so lovely. They feel really bad that I'm not getting the clinical placement that I would normally get. So virtually any time there's a chance where they see that it will be good for my learning, they really encourage me to take that chance. So I've had plenty of practice, say, taking bloods, doing ECGs, interpreting them, getting the story from the patient, presenting it back to a senior. So for example, if someone comes in, the nurse or the doctor will, take a basic history from them. They will work out very quickly what's likely going on, and then say, Ollie, you do as much as you can now. Take a full history, write us out a set of notes. We'll come back and check them in a minute. Do us the bloods, do us an ECG, come back to us, tell us what you think is going on and what management you think we should do. Then if you've missed anything, and I usually miss one or two things just because I'm not used to the process, they'll kind of correct me, and then we do everything that we need to do. And that's actually the reason why I'm wearing the stethoscope. As a healthcare assistant, obviously that's not something I would do normally, but because there's been so much scope for examining patients, because examining hearts, listening to heart sounds is something that I need to do for my clinical exams, there's been loads of opportunity to do that. And everyone's just been super, super friendly. The nurses, the other healthcare assistants that I have worked with, the doctors on the wards. I honestly thought it was going to be a bit rubbish, particularly when I moved to this new assessment unit, and I didn't think there would be very much for me to do, but actually there's been a ton of stuff to do. Been able to go to cath lab and see a lot of the patients that come in when they come back to have angiograms, have replacement heart valves put in. Been able to go to theatre, and because it's so quiet at the moment with no med students kind of in the department, I'm the only med student there, and the consultants really like talking me through the procedures and things. So I feel kind of guilty because I think I'm probably having a much better learning experience than most, but there's been a lot to do. I'm learning a lot. I have no desire to become a cardiologist. You know, I'm still pretty much gung-ho about surgery, and that's what I want to do. But you need to learn a lot of general medicine, obviously, for your time as a med student, as an F1 and F2 and SHO. And it's been really good, just core medicine, good medical practice, seeing professionalism and just how people talk to patients and how patients behave in unexpected ways. And that's also been a huge part of it, just dealing with the ways in which the NHS doesn't work. I've had to negotiate on behalf of patients for them to be able to go home, you know, tonight instead of having to be admitted overnight when they really don't want to. You can have these conversations with your seniors and they'll take you seriously because you're the one who's actually spent the time with the patient. And then just a final piece of news, I'm really, really excited to have secured an internship place with ASME, who are the Association for the Study of Medical Education, for the next year. I put in an application. I filmed it between 3 and 8 a.m. post-night shift on the day it was due. I think it was due at 5 p.m. that day, and then heard back really, really soon that I was very lucky and had got a place. There are 4 of us on the team, so basically we're completing a project. I think we complete a project each, as well as some collaborative projects, but with mentoring and support from the high-ups at ASME, which I'm really, really looking forward to. The team, there's 3 medical students and a junior doctor doing these internships. Everyone seems really lovely so far, and I'm really, really happy and feel very, very fortunate to have got one of these positions. Medical education is something that I definitely want to be part of my career, 100%, and I've actually been looking at master's degrees in medical education, which I think I'm likely to do in my F3 year. That's after your first 2 years practicing as a doctor, but probably before applying for specialty training, both because I really love medical education and teaching and learning more about how we measure impact in teaching and teaching theory. And also it really benefits you in specialty application now. They're paying increasing amounts of attention to people who can teach and clinician educators. So yeah, there's going to be some cool things going on. We go back to placement on the 29th of June, and I'm starting in A&E. There have been some changes to the way my education is going to work, because I've only got a year of my course left. I'm about a year away from becoming a doctor. My finals are less than a year from now. I remember my first day of med school. I remember my interview. I remember meeting everyone in my cohort on the offer holders day, but we'll cover all that another time. Take care, guys. Thanks for watching. As ever, if you've got any questions about applying or the UKCAT going on at the moment, or anything I can do to help, just let me know. And don't forget to enter my stethoscope giveaway. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys. There are 3 ways you can support the channel. The first one is to like, comment, subscribe, share this video with a friend. Just enjoy it generally. Second, you can buy me a coffee if you found it useful using my Ko-fi link, which will help keep me awake during the editing process. And then thirdly, you can use my referral link to save 10% off your first year of Complete Anatomy 2020. my favourite 3D anatomy learning tool. Take care guys, and I'll see you next time.